Okay, Saturday night random stream. Keep me from going crazy. See how this goes. Make sure everything's up and running properly. Okay, so focus of the stream is basically to get my changes stuff. I mean, I haven't really finished this. I was in two minds as to how this was working, and then I was like, you know what? I'm putting all this effort into building this, but I have not even tested it yet. So I really do need to just start writing some tests and make sure that's working. If I'm going to do it. Oh, trap. Hello. How's it going? How did you finish up? I had to go get some food, and then I'm like, I'm going to stream for a bit this evening. So you get the progress bar working properly. I do this often. I sit here on a Saturday and I think I'll stream it a bit, and then I'll start watching streams. So I was in your stream, and I was watching Emporium guys stream at the same time, and hanging out there, and then hours have gone past, and I've not actually got anything done. Yeah. Okay. So what I've been trying to do, I've been trying to do a bit of planning today, and if only to try and start to think through some of the pieces I actually need to build. Um, I can keep adding items into my little backlog here and never get anything done, um, which isn't going to help me. I'm aiming to get the software to a place where I can actually use the software to do what I actually intended to do, right? So, but I feel that this notification piece is kind of a big piece. I consider putting another streamer on while streaming for that reason. Then people don't need to open multiple streams like I often do. Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to hang out in your stream. Um, when you have the chats about stuff, and you've got so much knowledge, so it's good to hang out and chat about stuff. But when you're being productive, I can listen to that and kind of follow along a bit. So, but then I realized that my afternoon is disappearing quickly. So I just thought I'm gonna start the stream up, get on with some coding, and see how it goes. So yeah, I've been trying to track a few things in here. Um, my work recently on the project has kind of been chaotic, and I haven't really managed to attach to. I've done too much work on single stories. So I'm actually trying to slow that down a little bit and narrow in on actual pieces of work that I can add that will move me forward. But in reality, all I can do right now is large pieces of work because it's still the architectural components. And this actually goes back to something you said the other day about the going out ahead and plotting some things out. These things are things I don't quite understand enough to define clearly in stories. Um, so I think I have to do a bit of experimentation here. Um, I don't think I actually do have much of a choice because I just don't know how much time it's worth spending sitting down trying to figure these things out before I actually go and just do them. So what I was trying to do, because I actually got to this one, I should be able to configure a notification. So Again, the idea being that the changes will be produced from comparing objects. I don't need to produce the changes at the point I actually create the data because I don't know. I don't want that to be the responsibility of that piece. It's not the way I need the system to work. The changes themselves will be calculated off events that happen. I'm thinking through that actual before I actually go too far ahead on that idea. Because now I'm saying it, I'm thinking about it from a different perspective. So again, if I publish a change, there's nothing to say I can't publish the change and the well, if you don't feel comfortable with the technology, you perhaps shouldn't be incorporating it into your project. I'd spite to get some insight into the tech, and if you feel like it's good for your needs, then you're already into your second implementation. Yeah, that's what I'm kind of going through. What do I need to achieve? Um, there is Mojo. Thank you for stopping by. I hope the comedy show is a good one. But you're right. At this point, considering the technologies I am using in the system so far, adding more technology into the system that I have less understanding of actually adds significant risk because it adds a lot of overhead if I don't understand how to use it effectively. If there's problems with it, I've got more bugs to chase down. But what I was thinking about then is I've kind of gone down this track with the idea of changes. Don't do analysis, it's bad. Because I don't want to make my API responsible for figuring out changes purely because it just slows me down getting into the database. But is that enough of a reason? If I build changes out here, it means that the responsibility is off. The data's stored. I have the data in its current form. It's good, and this can consume that event sooner. So again, if I move it back here, my risk increases because now if calculating a change goes wrong, I could potentially fail to store the actual object. And that's what I care about most, getting that data into the store as quickly as possible and moving on with the rest of the system. So that's why changes is an external component. Doing it this way, I have to store the current version and then compare it. But to get the throughput in the system, I now have to build out a more complicated system, right? Um, whether that be Kafka consumers or whether that be Akka or whatever. Akka, I feel more comfortable with now, having gone through some of that stuff. I feel like it's not a technology that would add a um, too major a challenge. But will it improve the application too much? Enough to warrant that. And again, I know about what I've got here, but that would mean that in here now I need to know what the object was and what has changed, or flag somehow what has changed. And I feel that might make this messier. So I'm just at a crossroads really where I'm trying to plan this out. I'm trying to figure out what it is that how I want to achieve this. Obviously, going this route does give me the freedom to change this later on. So if I decide on, oh, I don't want to use Akka, I want to use a different technology, I want to use whatever method I want to use, I can swap that out a lot easier than if I integrate it into my API component. From the one option I do have, hey, Mr. Horn, how you doing? Thank you very much for your time yesterday in the stream. Doing good. I was just saying I've spent most of the afternoon watching Trap and Emporium guys streams, putting off doing anything, and then I was like, I'm going to start stream. I kind of need to get streaming. Well, I need to get this done, so I'm starting to stream because it'll help me stay focused on the productivity. Roman was fun. Do it again. Nice. I have put a event on the schedule for the end of August. I believe that's my next day off that overlaps properly. So we'll try it again. One option I do have here. Let's have a look. Share kernel, interceptors. I just want to see if this is possible. So if we do a save changes interceptor, and then public override, saving changes. What does this give me? If event data.context is not null, nice. I've been over my head figuring out the algorithm to space nodes. For 18 hours, I could not get rid of a row between a single group. Space nodes. Sometimes you got to do that. I think being willing to do that is it's good because you're exploring. Okay, so that's the change tracker. Okay. Nodes on a graph editor. Okay. So var changes equals from entry in event data.context dot change tracker. So can you get in the change tracker, can you get what it was and what it's going to be? It does. Where entry.state equals modified, select new equals entry dot That just array. That's property values. So my thought here is what I'd do is if this is possible, because then we've got the root entry. We don't need to calculate the differences. We don't need to say, oh, we've got this and store it in a separate store, right? If we apply this and say, okay, well now you can do change tracking. It does give that risk again of, and this is what worries me, is hey, Deflux, how you doing? It is kind of a pipeline, but it does mean I can publish an event here to say this entity is being changed, and then I can save that out as an actual event and publish an actual stream of changes independently. But again, I'm concerned about the cost if it's slow or if it locks or it has an issue. What happens then? But again, all of these things, what we've done is intercepted what, in this case, what has happened, right? So this is post save. So this happens post save and this happens pre save. I do know from experience that I say that I have experienced before where this has messing with this has broken things, but we'll see. So let's have a look. So and entry dot. Actually, let's follow the same pattern with the entries. Of course, I didn't do it with that. Yeah. Dot. It's it's on. It's the on radar. Select either entity. Gotcha. So that's yeah. So actually, I need to be. Entry dot entity is I entity and that's it pretty much. You're watching 5 of the streams anyway. So that's that. Take care, Mojo. Thanks for stopping in. Have fun. Well, I would hope that's the point of going to a comedy show. So this would give me all the entities that have changed in this save. And then for each change in changes. You're playing with all stuffs. Nice. You playing with like using Entra, or are you using something like Auth0 or I'd assume Entra being that you do a lot of Azure. Entra. Publish, changed entities. It's task, publish. No, none of it's async, is it? Void, publish, changed entities. Why do I always do that? Perfectly good. Hey, Supplied Orange, how you doing? Why do I always do that? Hey, Emporium guy. One second, Orange. Supplied Orange. So I am building an application for project management, essentially, and work tracking. So think Jira. If you've ever used that. I keep saying it because most people that do join the stream know what Jira is. Oh, that update. Yes. So what I've spent the last 9 months working on. This is why the number of projects Emporium guy. Um, yep, see, 51 projects. So what I've spent the last 9 months working on is building this application out. I'm starting it, obviously. Come on, number 9. And basically, what didn't start? Start that one again. The challenge with having 9 projects have to start up. Jira looks like a code-based tracker. Is that what this is? No, so Jira is not a code-based tracker. Jira is an agile project management tool. So work tracking, so you can put tickets in there, you can or stories or tasks or whatever you want to call them, and you can kind of assign them to teams and um, allow that work to be tracked. So a team can be working on a set of work and we can see where they are with the progress and move things along. Primarily, it's a reporting insights tool for workflow. So most of it is based around giving reports and metrics on where things are, how much progress has been made, stories burned down, etc. It does link into repositories so you can actually know when stories or things or actual code has been written. So there are some elements of it that are like that. So what I've been working on is my own take on that based upon my own experience. The problem with Jira is it doesn't use AI to watch the software developers. TVD's products, on the other hand, will use AI. Oh, well, so basically the idea is that you can right now the focus is on the planning aspect. So you can add a planning item into the system, and with that planning item, you track, some description, the review date. The review date is the concept of basically when should we go and look at this again, which is oftentimes lost in tools like Jira, because what happens is if people are putting a lot of work in there, you kind of lose track of where it lies. So the review date is a concept of basically it will it will bubble itself up for you to review and decide, does anything need to be done with this? Does it need to be pushed back? Does it need to go somewhere else? But it will also share that action with other people. So if I push it back to, July 13th, it will move that to July 13th. Right. So now that's appearing in the current week. But someone will get notified of that happening so that you don't have um, you don't lose track of the actual thing. And similar, you can add requirements and you can attach files to these things as well. So yeah, I'm so happy you're spacing things well. Oh, my front end work is basic at best. I am trying very hard to get the idea across, but it does not. This is not where I'm happiest. So what I'm working on stream today is right now I need to be able to tell people what has changed, right? So when I go in here and I change that review date, right, like I just did, people want to know about those things, right? It's not just it happened and no one cares. I want to be able to provide the ability for um, management and other people within the organization that actually care about work being tracked to be told, by the way, this review date was changed. And they can be told in a variety of ways. I might care very little about the review date changing. As a developer, I definitely don't care about the review date changing because it's not on me to review it. But as a manager, I might care if the review date change moves it into the current week to be reviewed. I might be like, oh, I care and I want to be notified via a dashboard alert, or I want to be notified by an SMS, or I want to be notified by whatever other form I could imagine. So the system's built or going to be built. The design I have in mind so that I can configure, oh, I want to know if something gets moved into the current week that I care about, i.e., let's say I'm in charge of planning stuff. I want to care. I want to be notified immediately if that happens. But if something gets moved to next year and it's not nothing to do with planning, I don't care. If it's something gets moved to next month and it is to do with planning, I might want that on a daily digest, right? So giving the ability for the system for the users to configure how they receive the notifications so they don't get overwhelmed with notifications is an important aspect. So what I'm working on right now is figuring out the changes, like what actually changed in this code. And as I go, if anyone has any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to share. Hi, Thindle, how you doing? Late night? Um, Google Google Cookie Consent Manager. What even good is doing good. I'm doing good. Just had a nice fruit smoothie and sitting down to do some coding. I'm mostly questioning myself and my life choices. Yeah. I think Emporium guy's giving up on the concept of sleep. It's what, 9.5 hours? That's what, 6 a.m., 5 a.m., something like that for you now? I'm trying to get Google to realize that I've got a proper compliant cookie acceptance policy on the site. It's 5 a.m. Yeah, Google's changes to Chrome with the cookie stuff is yeah. They've been coming for a while by the looks of it. We hit some issues with cookies. Actually, on topic of auth, that's what we did. I was using Auth0. Speedrunning yourself to an awful sleep schedule. Yeah. So I'm using Auth0 to log into my application. And I had here we go. I had to change this to cache location local storage because the cookies got flagged by Google. And because everything's Chromium based, they all got flagged. So everything started complaining. So my answer was to basically say, use local storage. So now when I log into the application, um, instead of seeing um, cookies or whatnot down here, because these are the Auth0 legacy cookies, right? I see here, and that solved my cookie issue. Whether that's the right thing to do, I don't know. Yeah. If you want to have ad tracking for your users, yeah, sorry, not sorry. You need to have a local storage approved via a consent too. Oh, joy. Yeah. So I figure those sorts of lessons are for me to is for future me to learn once I start focusing on the UI aspects um in earnest. Why is this ad break taking forever? I swear it's been going for like 2 minutes. Is it evil to know if people have been at your site and looked at your products to target ads to them? I mean, none of us like it, do we? Really. The worst thing is being in the same household as people and getting ads for things they've looked at. It is kind of creepy. So in general, the tracking is something we don't all get along with, I suppose, but so I have the publisher. Hmm. So if I basically if I publish an event here, if I can actually publish a notification here of this entity changed, I could, in essence, create a change tracking listener that would then do the calculation. And because of the way that I've got the notification system hooked up, this actually publishes in it's an outbox. So it's disconnected. So it's actually if it fails to calculate changes, it wouldn't break the system. My major concern is again, it is changing the core functionality of the APIs. Whereas where I previously planned to do it, not designed, I didn't design anything. I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants right this second. The previous decision was to try and make it as a separate process so that when I published the integration event, I compare, you know, the previous version of the integration event to the current and say, here's what changed. Now I would do it out of the main application and publish a stream of changes. Is that bad? And what I'd do is I'd create a planning items dot changed and feed a stream of those out. Either way, I'm still going to have to overhaul part of my Kafka piece because the Kafka piece is no longer totally fit for purpose because I need to be able to name a stream based off something other than a time. I think the reason most people dislike it when big corporations do it is because they share it with unnamed third parties. Well, I kind of do because I let Google handle it from start to end. Yeah, I mean, it's the whole. In general, we know that they're listening and they're watching, and you have to jump through hoops to try and make it not happen. And you can put up giant boxes saying, please accept these cookies. Oh, which cookies would you like to accept? Oh, here's all the different types of cookies. And every user goes, accept all, get rid of. Or they say no, and then the site doesn't behave properly. Regarding your personal info, yes. GDPR is not a bad thing necessarily. Okay, should be that. So because yeah, my thought here is what I do is I say publisher dot do publisher dot publish new entity changed event, but we need the type here. Entity type equals entry dot entity dot get type. That would be entity changed entity type, change to original, dated. I'll do it in that one, main event. Oh, I can make this, okay. So I can make an asynchronous version of this. I'm gonna have to do that. Task. Tell me there's no asynchronous version of this one. There is. I don't think anyone goes through and approves some of the cookies. It's either all or none of them. Yeah. I just think it's kind of just it's a pain as you're going through. Task inception result. I do that. Async task. Oh, that should be a value task, okay. This really? Oh no, they did value task that, okay. Fair enough. I need to await that. We need that. Then we can await that. That's a cancellation token in there. So then I need to decide where that lives. Because that's right now what happens is I've got the domain events, right? So the domain event publisher, after saving, it knows what event because we've queued up the event. Here we don't have an event. So it knows about iDomain event there in the kernel contracts, but do I put... All right, I'm going to give up and go count kittens. Lindell, thank you very much for stopping by. I appreciate it. Hope rest well and see you soon. Take care. So what I'm debating now is who, if I create a entity changed event, the biggest challenge I have is I have to create a subscriber for it in each um so we have we know the changes are happening. We've got both the before and after, right? The second on this object, right? We don't need to Tell you what, let's do this. Let's do that. Let's put a breakpoint here and see what that actually looks like before I go too far down this path. Let's understand what data we're going to receive and what we need. What I'm thinking is the handler for this is pretty much generic. It's basically take this event, calculate the differences, and feed it to a stream of a Kafka topic. If I do this the way I'm thinking of doing it, I'll create a version of the topic dot changes, right? Which does break some of my other stuff for Kafka. But then I will have a stream of what are the changes as well as the integration event of what the current state looks like. So you can consume either or, right? And no matter which path I went down, this was the way I was going to go. So first question I'm asking myself, am I overcomplicating this in the other direction now? Is it simpler? Not without repetitive code at each level. So it allows me to still stay single responsibility and I don't end up with a load of code in each handler that does stuff I don't need it to do. So let's go here, update to prime ng. I'll take a second. There you go. The description of this object should change now. Anytime. Is it not triggered on that one? Let's do 07. Interesting. Did it not run? No, 8 projects. The right project didn't start there. Is what I need. Things starting up slowly. I don't need that medicine. What is it starting? View, tickets, API gateway, talent management, GraphQL. Is it started? That's annoying. Not like it was erroring either. It just wasn't starting. Let's make sure that's into full stack again later. Okay, so that should now allow me to go in here. This should change description by server. There we go. You know, it helps. We go in here and we add. Here we go. Add pooled DB contexts and domain events. So if we stop the planning project there, we need to add services to add singleton. Change tracker, change tracking interceptor. And provider get required services. Change tracking interceptor. So this adds them in. That's planning items. If anyone's not sure what's going on and you're actually interested, you're always welcome to ask. I'm happy to show. Um, Me making progress is not necessarily the focus of any stream I do. I'm happy to talk about stuff, happy to talk through things if it helps. Okay, so let's try that once more. Change tracking interceptor. 07. There we go. Okay. So we got the yeah. Oh, the it got there, but it's the problem was because I just stopped and restarted a single project. It wasn't all quite right. It knew other things needed to change, so that broke everything else. So I need to start the entire stack up again. One of the things I've been talking about, talking about when you sit here and have a conversation with yourself, is it talking about or is it thinking? Just thinking loudly. Um, so one of the things I've been thinking about today is kind of how I want to lay out stories going forward, and I've started to put some pieces together as to how I might want to do things and start to define some standards. Thinking loudly, there you go. So, um, one of those things is when I'm talking about stories, when I start to plan out, here's how the story should work. An example might be, and this is why I'm developing the planning item separate to the actual ticketing, the story component of this is, as a planner, I might be saying, okay, well, I want to update, I want to have this screen and I want to update these values, and then I should get a notification that they've saved, right? Is that one story? Well, probably not, because there's actually a lot of work involved in building a screen out. So if I'm building out the planning item, I'm thinking of it more of as a wish list from a product manager. And then when it comes to the actual stories, I'm actually going to generate two stories from that one requirement, right? So this requirement might say, you know, um, should see a screen with some fields on it, etc. And from that requirement, we actually build two stories out. The first one is the API aspect of that, and the second one is the UI side of that. There's still value in the API side, especially in this system where the UI is decoupled. Okay, go ahead. Okay. Agile boards, and I've only ever used service now. Oh no. No, 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 not a follow bot, not now. Oh, can't do anything about the followers. Shield mode should prevent follow. It should actually say you have to have been watching for at least 30 minutes or something before you can follow, or something like that. I don't know any other way to stop this. So sorry that shield mode is up. It means that if you haven't been following for more than a month, you can't chat right this second. Well, that's happening, Deflux. So the challenge there is, and this comes from, regardless of, I understand the agile, the track business needs, and that you shouldn't do code needs. But in reality, the challenge is that stories get too big when you develop just for business needs. So what happens is you end up with a story that has got way too much size to it that it can. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I've experienced this across all sorts of other things. If you want to break it, if you want one story, you don't break two developers against one story unless you're pairing, right? So one story goes to one team member. In that world, you can only develop, if you want to develop the entire thing, then that's a team choice, but that story's bigger than it needs to be because you can actually develop two pieces individually, especially in this world. While I'm developing, I can develop the API completely independently and still have that behavior and then develop the UI. If you develop the UI and the API together, it's a lot more work. They can be broken into two stories, and those stories both provide value. The problem is that when we start to hold rigid to the agile thing, in that we say, oh, it has to have business value, which means that it only has business value when it can actually be used on screen, teams get, they drive themselves crazy trying to build every story into that plot, and the stories don't evolve correctly. So you end up with big stories that have too much, or little stories that are broken up unnecessarily because the team's trying to hold to that business value thing. So yes, I understand the agile path there. I understand the whole business need. I get what that's meant to be for, but in reality, it breaks teams more than it helps them. So that's why I'm going that path. You could still even, you don't have to. I'm going to use my product that way, right? It doesn't mean you have to do it that way, right? Again, I'm not trying to dictate that. I'm just going to say I'm going to do it that way so that a story for the API part can be developed without the UI attached to it. I realize that you can't talk in real time as well. I apologize. But I can't bring off this shield mode right this second. Just think, oh, the shield mode doesn't really protect me against very much, actually. It's actually pretty useless overall. It puts, it clears the chat. It puts it into a month-long followers only and puts a 30-second slow mode on. So actually, it can turn shield mode off. It's totally useless. I'll turn this thing off. I just want to turn it off. Turn off shield mode. Um, there you go. Okay, chat's back. I'll worry about the since Git already has a process for like grouping code together and tracking things like issues and PRs. So your argument would be I just don't do my tool and use Git. I'm not trying to superimpose my tool in composition with, I'm not trying to, nothing I'm trying to do with Git is um, Agile is a method for which we can create, track, process, progress. Your tool will be to help that process, I would assume. Well, my tool, what I'm building so far serves a few purposes. One, we are terrible at planning. We do not get requirements, and then we merge requirements with the actual work, right? So those were follow bots. Yeah, I got 999 follows. So we merge requirements with the work. So breaking out the actual planning item as a separate thing from the work to be done is a goal. The goal of that is to try and help teams focus on discovery first. So the items can be planned out without actually being merged with the work. Because oftentimes in Jira, you end up with a massive backlog of items that need constant grooming because they've been put in there. Now to the outside world, it looks like the team has got a load of work it's never got to. You actually have to dig deep into that to figure out what is actual work versus what is stuff that we added 6 months ago that's now deprecated, right? So the planning section of this is aimed at trying to identify what is planning versus what is actual work to be worked on. So the planning is kind of a holdback so that when you're ready to make it actual stories to make it work, you can say, let's review this. That requirement, that requirement, that requirement, they're bundled under one story. There's a story. That the other requirements on this thing that you created are other stories with the aim of helping guide with the aim of helping them guide through. Sorry, I'm also trying to. Oh, one of the accounts has already been disabled as well. There we go. Should kick that into motion. So yeah, the goal of the product, the goal of the project so far is to basically say, okay, well, the planning aspect of getting to the requirements is distinct from the actual work to be done, right? Because there's getting the requirements the developers need and making that conversation happen. From here, what would happen is you would then create the stories that would go into the regular backlog and be done. So my method of doing this is is my choice, right? It's the reality is I've seen it so often where we have one story that has so much work in it that we don't get to it in a sprint. But it could have been split up into two, and progress could have been made. Hi, MKB, how you doing? We've not seen that style of where and select new syntax for a while in C#, not since 4.5 days where. Nostalgic. Well, just to mess with your mind a little bit, I chose not to use that style there. I'm still in two minds as to which one I actually prefer, even after all these years. Sometimes I prefer this style, sometimes the other ones. um, for consistency, I should probably do it in this style because it does read a little easier for certain stuff I'm doing here. But yeah, defaults. The biggest problem I have with Agile in general, and this is what most people have a problem with Agile in, is that we try to hold to the rules really tightly, and that's kind of not the point as well, right? The point is to make sure that it's working for you and delivering software. So yeah, it's holding to that. It has to have business value rule has often tripped teams I've worked on up to the point where we just it breaks down. So that's why I'm going at it from that direction. But again, what I'm building doesn't mean you have to follow that path. I don't care which you pick, but using both interchangeably is shootable offense. Consistency is king. I would agree there, yeah. Are we dissing agile? Someone hold my beer. I could go all day. Agile, I love. Scrum is not agile, right? Um, I mean, you have way more experience than me, but I've seen the classic mistake where people think agile is there to track code. It's not just the case, and it's counterproductive. Agree, but I've also, and it's not. It doesn't come from the tracking code perspective. This comes from the. If I'm to build, let me just use an example, right? If I say add a screen in this application right now, all right. If I say I want to be able to add a user, right? I have to go and create an API endpoint. I think I actually do have the API endpoint, right? But um, I have to be able to create an API endpoint. That API endpoint is going to send a command to do a thing, which is going to save to a database. So I've got to create a schema. I've got to create an API endpoint. I've got to make sure there's tests around the command that creates the thing. I've got to make sure that things are fired off to go to auth0 to register the user. There's a whole workflow there, and it's quite a bit of work. Now, the UI side of things, I've got to build a new screen. I've got to add into a workflow. I've got to build a form. I've got to do this. Those two things could be done distinctly. So, oh, I've got a visitor. So, one second. Okay, sorry about that. So, I got invaded by little puppies. Well, not little one anymore. They're dogs. Let's be clear on terms. Agile is one sentence from which 12 bullet point loose primitives were made. It is good and no one can really deny its usefulness. The BS that got bolted on by frameworks is fluff and is good in some situations and others are actually against Agile principles. Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I'm holding on to right this second, MKB, is the whole a story has to have business value, right? Everything has business value. Can it be delivered? Yes, it can be delivered. Whether it actually, but right. So yeah, we're in the process stuff, right? Yeah, but it's attached, right? Whether we like it or not. Um, but nothing says that it has to be. Whenever you hold to that, um, but whenever you hold to the whole business terms, you start making justifications for pieces of work you need to do, and then you have to then you become more contrived, and and I've just seen it fail so often with that. where we get stuck on that and we can't put a piece of work together because we get stuck on how the piece of work should be put together. All I'm doing is I'm going to separate the UI aspect of it from the server aspect, from the backend aspect of it, just because they are two significant chunks of work. And again, the entire point of Agile was it? Let's go back. That I don't want to. Individuals and interactions over processing tools. So I think, so I suppose to the point, right? It's these clear little terms that were built, but then we kind of put everything on top of it. Individuals and interactions over process tools, right? That doesn't say business people. No, it doesn't. That does not say that. This says it's more important to talk about it than to stick it in a tool, to understand it, individuals and interactions, right? Well, not necessarily meetings, even, but it's more important to understand what you're doing than sticking it into a tool, is the way I read that. Because again, working software over comprehensive documentation, working software. So when I say business terms, I'm saying use the terms of the business, but you can't always do that. You need technical pieces. And every time you need to put stuff in and you have to follow that rule, you end up with a challenge because you've got to figure out how it pertains to the business. So I have to spend my time tracking down people to get work done, but I could create a story to talk about it. I used to love Lean and XP. Devs work side by side with business people, no products. You paired with other devs and stakeholders loved it. It sounds also, Ms. Ranhon, it sounds like you've got a really good workflow going. Whether it truly fits what people expect or not, it sounds like you've got a very effective workflow running for you right now. So it like, and that's what matters most over everything else. I suppose to me, this platform that I'm building is just my way of understanding it a little bit more, or trying to put in the things that I think matter. Like for instance, the terms using. Are you talking about terms as in ubiquitous language? Or are you talking about terms? I'm not quite sure what you mean by business terms exactly. Then works for small teams and we're looking to scale, but agile that was. I do not think it scales. I I don't think agile does scale. I think agile is best when it's left to a team. I don't think agile should scale. I think agile should, or the practices that we use, whether we call it, again, we blur the lines so easily. And I'm going back, the reality is we need to be productive. And it's actually the business need to see that productivity that's actually the biggest problem we have, right? We can be productive. We can develop working software, right? We can respond to change. But if we try and hold ourselves to really rigid rules on how we have to do that, then we get stuck. And every time, and most of Jira is built around reporting to management. How fast are we going? So what I'm trying to do with this is build something that can get the heck out of the way of the developers and let developers develop software. Right. Business people and developers must work together daily throughout the project. That's what PM's for. Right. Yeah. What? Not really. Build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need, and trust them to get the job done. I mean, PMs are essentially your interface to the business, right? They're to make sure that the requirements are okay. I didn't say they manage people. Right. I didn't say, but I didn't say they manage people in that sentence. I said they were the interface. No, it's not. An interface is not a manager. You can't have the entire business in every meeting with all the developers. The developers are the developers don't start off as experts all the time, right? Sometimes the developers need handholding through understanding why they're doing something and what it means to the business, which is why ubiquitous language is useful because you're using the same words to make sure that they understand things. The PM is an interface, not a manager of people, right? But that's not managing the people involved in developing the product. If a PM is the manager of the development team, things are already going wrong. I'm not saying a PM can't also be a manager, but they're not the manager of the developers, or they shouldn't be. That never goes really great from my experience. My PM can tell me that the stakeholder said we need this due to compliance. PM cannot tell me what time I should. Right. That's relay. And actually, having listened to Mr. Anhorn talk about this, that it seems like the workflow that they've established is actually pretty effective at helping relay that information. I was I was interested in hearing more about that one. What business terms should be the terms used in the agile process? Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying Jira can't be used effectively. I'm just saying that oftentimes it's not, and it's just it can become a big mess that needs constant revision. And again, it's not focused on development; it's focused on reporting progress with development. Working software is a primary measure of progress. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're too nice. Jira can't be used effectively. But in technical terms, within an agile process, for the most part, it's counterproductive or non-product. I'm not putting it in, essentially, I'm not putting it in an agile process. I'm saying, and this all started, by the way, for those that weren't here for the beginning of this, before I got spammed by 1,000 bots. Um, I'm just saying that when it comes to planning stories, I'm going to plan the UI from separate from the API. It was 9999. Yeah, it was 999. Yes, and they got quickly unfollowed. Um, for me, yes. For what I want to do, yeah. For no, not necessarily a business story. What I said was, when it comes to requirements, a requirement might actually become two things because the what the PM sees as a screen might actually require an API and a UI aspect towards it, right? So they see it as one thing, but those that actually spawns two things in my world because it is a lot of work to do the API. Having the API there does add value to the system as a whole. The system is now working better than it did. Again, we can be pedantic over how we deem business value, and the UI is a separate story because it needs to be wired up. And what I'm trying to figure out is there's certain things in there. The API has to have a testable component to it, right? So it has to have an HTTP request created to demonstrate using that endpoint, and the UI has to have tests. But I've seen all too often what happens when we try and stick those two things in one story and we miss on a sprint because the story is way too big, right? Because we're scared to break it up because it doesn't add business value. I'm just being pragmatic about it and saying that's how I'm going to plan this out because I realize the size of these things. So if I want to start following sprints and I actually want to start dog fooding my own tool, I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. To be to stick with that agility, I want to be able to change things, but I also want to be able to track things. Seems logical. At my place, if one feature could be 3 to 4 stories, with Epic can be 20 stories. Yeah, you might need changes to several domains. Well, you want to just define a story effectively at that point. Okay, so in my example, right, I said, so from the UI perspective, we have, okay, so from a UI perspective, we add a new screen. On that screen, we had a new form. We have a data model that needs to be transferred through a store. Then we post that to an API, right? So there's a whole lot of UI and mockup and markup, etc. And eventually I want to get to testing. So that's an entire piece. But then we go to the server side where we need to create an API endpoint. We send a command. We need to potentially create data schema as well. We need unit tests around our code. We create the handler and we publish any integration events that need to be dealt with, etc. Those two are quite large pieces of work. You stick them together and you can't release them independently. They could slow you down quite substantially. Whereas I could deliver an API endpoint and I could deliver the UI. They don't actually have to go hand in hand at all. They can both add value to the system. They're both providing facilities in the system to do things. And subtasks is just, again, they are quite large pieces. So that's why I would break them down. But I've witnessed what happens when teams try to make those two things one thing time and time again and miss sprints because, like, well, we did the UI side. We haven't got it hooked up yet. So we'll just deliver the UI. No, you can't deliver the UI because it has no value whatsoever. It doesn't go anywhere. You could deliver the API, just would have no UI against it, but it wouldn't break the system to have it there. I think we might be arguing with semantics here, ticket, subtask, etc. I think that often does create some challenges. Like to me, a story is the piece of work. I rarely subtask out, right? Because I think subtasks subtasks don't add any visualization. Well, in Jira at least, unless they've changed drastically how they work, they just add noise to the board, right? I'd love to see someone who's effectively used, again, fluff. Agile never mentions stories. So that, yeah, that is the processor on it. Yeah, the tools that have been built. Yeah, there might be a bigger issue with missing sprint being too big of a deal. In reality, it really matters. Oh, I need subtasks. How am I supposed to know what I expect to do me? Tell other people? That's asking too much of me. Well, again, I think this is why I'm focused on the planning aspect first, because this is the part that matters the most, right? Gathering good requirements, asking good questions, and figuring out, okay, what do you actually want? Because to me that seems focused on the people aspect of this, right? Is more, let's figure out what you actually do want and make sure that we're asking the right questions before we even say let's point something or let's create an actual story. That's why I've broken this out as its own process. Right. So the PM can sit down with developers and go through these things. The PM can like, this is what I think. And it's kind of this big requirements is really their wish list of what they want to see and what they want to do, but we can question it before it goes into the backlog of actual work to be done. Once it's accepted and moved as an actual story or multiple stories, because again, I'm providing the ability to say, I think it belongs on these projects, so they don't have to put it in a bucket. You seem more than capable of putting your point across in an inquisitive and productive way, just reading your prior chats. Why not? And I've seen the effects of what happens when questions aren't asked. I've seen what happens when you get to talk with business people, you get subject matter experts, you get to do planning meeting, like big picture planning meetings with them, and you get to introduce them to developers and stuff. I have experienced several ways of doing this. Um, and every time I've seen it break down is when we come to stuff like that, where we get stuck on the fluff, as NKB puts it. Your product would be a good replacement for our team's workload. We even use requirement section. I prefer progress over planning, but the problem is that planning. That's the thing. If you say you prefer progress over planning, what is progress? So if you don't like planning, you just like to do, right? You just like to code. Well, we already determined that was bad years ago. Hi Hexic, how you doing? Welcome in. Unfortunately, the reality is that again, things like Jira are there to give the business insights into things, and then we stick a whole load of requirements on top of people to do that job. What I want to do is build something that is going to make sure that the developers, the ones that make the progress by doing the coding, are only dragged in when they need to be, and they can make progress on stuff they know they have, and the business can worry about the reporting and the insights independently of the developers. But working software assumes that everyone's got the same level of competency as you as a developer, that they're are you writing the best code? Are you writing unit tests around things? Are you making sure the code has few regressions? What steps are you taking? All those things take time and effort and refinement. Not always. Sometimes just coding is the way. If you spend 200 hours planning and 100 hours creating working software, you're going to be beaten out by people that can do the planning 50 hours. Beaten out again is like, yeah, you can throw code together quickly. You can throw a system together quickly. As we've talked about before, I could probably have thrown a lot of more of this system out by now had I just sat down and just not focused on any of the thought and coding is the way. Planning isn't as good as it's cracked up to be. I disagree there. Working is a loose term. A payments domain without a basket for any customer to check out is useless, although it might be working and fully tested. I I think in general, from what I've seen, developers as a whole, if left to their own devices, will go off and develop software. And they'll get stuff done, but oftentimes there's churn on that because then it's not what people have asked for or what people expected. I've seen too many times that the whole, well, I didn't. Why is it doing that? Well, I thought it should do that, and that assumption has caused a problem. So what I'm trying to do is again, I want planning to be a part that doesn't involve the developers to begin with, right? This is a product manager's wish list essentially, right? This is what this is meant to be. Is say, hey, here's what I'm thinking about. Here's what I want to do. Here's the things I want it to achieve. Or here's some screenshots, and they can build on this. And here's when I next need to review it, right? So that it will constantly remind them to keep checking on it. Once they're ready, they can demonstrate this to developers, and the developers didn't have to get involved in this part, but the requirements are there. Prior proper planning and preparation prevents poor performance. The only thing I can assert from this guy is developers as a whole are argumentative bunch. We're worse than Reddit. Absolutely. But again, I don't, what I'm building, I don't want to be for developers. Check D on QI. I don't think I saw that one. But I don't want this to be for developers. I want this to be so that developers barely have to touch it, right? Because again, you want to get on with the work, right? So the work is, here's what we've got to do. Let's pick it up and get on with it, right? That's what it should be. But we spend a lot of time chasing around in Jira. Where's this? Oh, it's in this board. Oh, this person has this responsibility. Oh, we need to do this. I want to get rid of that and make that a visible to management. That's what I'm trying to focus on. I'm trying to build that where the components of the system will help tell management exactly where things lie, right? Oh, this plan, where are we on this project? Oh, it never left planning. Why didn't it leave planning? Well, that's not the developers, right? Um, my PM does all that work, right? And sadly, it doesn't always happen that way. Like I said, I think you've got a good process from the sounds of it, where you've got an effective team that communicates. Um, Actually, I was trying to find something to. I'm going to save that and watch it later. But I was trying to find there's a series of shorts I was watching earlier on. I gotta try and I bet if I flip through my phone very quickly, I'll uh I'll find what I'm after. Oh, now I don't find any. Awesome. I must have looked at too many car videos in between. They were coming up every other video. Basically, it's a guy doing shorts, and it's there you go. Um, Find it 1 second. Yeah, this feels like someone who's been hurt. My PM does all that work, and we are more lost with him as we have no idea what the business wants. We know what the PM has prioritized. Lol. Again, just argumentative. And I know you get a PM that has an agenda, that has a way they think it should go, and they put that first. You end up with missed product requirements, right? Or you end up with completely missed products. Well, there I go. I get all the questions in a day. I know firsthand how hard it is to keep all work straight. Are they going on vacation? Okay. Yeah. Having someone to talk to ask a question, if you're working on something, having someone to say, is this actually correct, and adjust can save a developer a lot of time, right? So a PM should be that person. They should not be dictating how code's written. They should not be dictating necessarily. They're not people managers, right? But yeah, it's and again, coming just coming back around on that thing, how I do this when I actually get this part working, how I do it is again completely my choice into my process management. We might be looking back on this in 6 months and be like, oh yeah, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? And be able to reflect on that. And I'm happy to do it at that point, right? But it's that's because that's not running now. Now it is. It's just taking its sweet time to load. I think we can, if it can make these tools be more increased visibility of where things lie, how much progress has been made, when they were last updated, and give people the options of subscribing however else to do it. I think it's an effective tool. And I think that's what we're lacking. And get developers back to that almost that, you know, it's a conversation that happens once in a while. You can review things, you can see things. If there's no requirements, it's very obvious there were no requirements from the moment it was created, right? You can't just stick a description here and say, okay, now what we created, right? Generate a story. There must be requirements. Um, if things are sat waiting for too long, they can be highlighted to people. These are stagnant, right? Um, and they don't have to have any developers keeping track of where we are with things. Yeah, it's a really nice to have a barrier. Do all devs need this interaction with clients? That just leads to meetings, I think. I think developers understanding the business they're in is healthy. I think being able to at least answer the question as to why are we doing this is useful for developers. Do you want to put all developers in front of clients? No. Um, but I think it's worthwhile having I believe in, and I think I asked this on Friday. It's only Saturday. Today's gone really slowly. I've been up since 4 a.m. Um, I think that it's useful for me personally. I like to know what the roadmap looks like, what the things are that we're planning or that we want to do down the line. I think that's a useful conversation to have with developers. But the problem is that I know too many developers that then go off start building the software. And you've got to be careful because you don't want developers trying to plan software that doesn't exist. And that's a dangerous balance. I know some developers that will go off and start planning for the future 8 months out. You've got to be careful about that. Me, I can ignore it until it comes around, right? I'm happy to say, okay, that's a future requirement, but this other thing that you've got planned is going to get affected by that. So you might want to reconsider. It's not planning, it's visibility. I agree with that. I hope our devs know why they're building and who for. 9% of developers don't know that, and that's why they have low motivation. Right. I think it does help to understand what you're working on. And planning with devs can be very problematic. But we also need to, we also need as an industry to be more self-disciplined as well. We need to do certain things. And, things like Yagni are very important. So making sure that developers that don't work that way are encouraged to work that way. Like bring some of those practices. I think all the practices we do kind of go hand in hand to developing good software. But if you use any of them, out of whack, other things break down. Weirdly enough, I once challenged a Scrum coach. Would they accept Scrum for anything in their life other than software, like a car service, or imagine getting a house built in a Scrum way? That's actually one of the typical examples I'm giving, by the way, House. A builder working in 2 week sprints, chatting for weeks about this, about this, inviting you as a stakeholder to multiple meetings, and every 2 weeks saying they have delivered value as the concrete got poured. Weird, he didn't answer yes. Yeah, maybe it all came around because developers in general. I'm also this is very important to note. This manifesto was created by a bunch of some of the most opinionated people in development, right? I mean, they're strong developers without a doubt, but some of these people in this list are very opinionated, but they're also, most of them, from what I know, understand, are also highly confident, speaking to customers, getting requirements, etc. They're not the normal developers. So the people that came up with the list aren't your average developer. True, true. There is that, yeah. I've always found it weird, for example, the stand up. Like board shows what I'm working on. Board shows what you're working on and what you did yesterday. Pointless. I I disagree with end of sprint retrospectives. I think if something's broken, you fix it now, or you address it now. You don't leave it 2 weeks, right? Um, so I generally don't jump on 2 week retrospectives or end of sprint retrospectives. Um, I believe in adapting. Skill issue. The stand up, yeah, I kind of get. Um, yeah, I think that we do better when we collaborate. To what Mr. Anholm was saying before, right? He's got a product manager that is very effective, is able to relay things properly, deliver things on time, etc. Um, when the team is effectively working, like together, collaborating, not following some like, oh, we must do this because we have been told we must do this. Um, I think things work better anyway. Um, yeah, you shouldn't have to wait. You should be able to reach out to a team member and say, "Hey, have you got a few minutes? And I need to go through this. Can you help me?" And get things moving along. I will say that a Scrum team, an Agile team, or however we want to put it, a team, the software development team, these days has no real place for rock stars. Rock stars are more damaging, and I think a team benefits from having people who have specialization that are really good in certain areas. But I think you need to be able to bring everyone along for the ride as well. Um, if I'm working on something and I'm the only one that can work on something because for whatever reason, I try to still make sure the code. I feel attacked with that comment. I wish I could say I'd never gone off and said, "Oh, I'll just go and I'll solve this on my own." Right? I've done the same thing, but the reality is that I look back on that, and that's why I kind of paused. Is I'm still writing the code as if the team are going to look at it. I still make sure that I try and schedule meetings to make sure the team are included. I try and make sure there's enough documentation and I'll still follow all the same principles I would normally if I was developing with the team rather than just by the team to make sure that I'm not the one that's going to pick it up. If it breaks, someone else can still pick it up and work with it. So yeah, sometimes we have those things, but I think it's more important that you don't have, if you've got a developer on your team that is, I'll just fix it, I'll do it. You need to break that down as a team. You need to break that down. Um, if you're letting people take ownership of stories, or you're letting them run with the story because the junior developer won't get it done as quick, you need to break that down, right? It's just healthy for the team. So I think it works better as a team. Wonder why that message wasn't posted. I didn't get any messages saying you had anything blocked. Oh, I didn't even get told. Hold on. Do I get to see anything? Oh, nothing pops up for me. Huh. Moderation, maybe? No. We'll do it in bits. It's the first bit. Okay. Man, I don't mind either extremes. It's the middle I can't stand. You want me an autonomous unit able to move, interact, and get stuff done, or a cubicle worker who takes a ticket, does exactly what it says, and there's a problem, goes to one person and twiddles thumbs while waiting because I have no power to do anything independently. It's the middle ground I can't stand. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a hard balance. There's no perfect answer to anything. um, you want me to get stuff done while simultaneously putting on so many browsers as possible. Yeah. I mean, I just want to build software, right? I'm in some respects, DFOS, I'm with you. The planning, yeah, it's great, but it, if it's effective, otherwise, just let me build software. I'll go and write software. But I've seen what happens when people go off and write software in general, right? I might have a higher standard. The person next to me might not have the same high standard. They might have a pretty low standard and be the person that just does exactly what they're told and gets the job done to the bare minimum, right? Um, so I think we have to have some of these things in place. But what I see, what I want as a future is a future where we can just get stuff out of the way. We don't have to have. I think there's the link I gave you to the YouTube before. I don't know if anyone watched any of those. One of them was like, okay, so this has been a productive day, and the one guy's on the call. He's like, it's been 9.5 hours, and we got to watch you do yoga. And she's like, okay, well, let's do a stand up. And he's like, why do we need to do a stand up? We just spent all day together. um, like, yeah. I like the bare minimum guy sometimes. There's a time and place for that. Yeah, I know. Maybe our definitions of bare minimum are different. But uh yag me to the max. I mean, if someone writes like that, right? If they're doing basically, up, I don't need this, I don't need this, I don't need this, I just need this, and this. It's easy to build on top of, as long as their coding standards are appealing, are up to scratch as well. As long as you're consistent in that, like you said before, right? I was already mindful of the fact that I'd created two ways, right? I'm inconsistent, right? Especially in code that's this close together, right? I'm inconsistent. I don't need it to be inconsistent. What I should do is, at least make them interchangeably. Select. Select entity. Oh, that's why. How did I do that? To be fair, if even that, if it really bothers me, 10 minutes for Linter to standardize it. Right. But consistency in the code base, being able to make sure that the code is at least readable. I mean, neither of these was unreadable, to be honest, in my world at least. Entry is entity. That's because that's at that point, not. I bet you that's there. It's there. Yeah, it is. Select entity. Hold on, how did I do that then? Oh, it's because I added a where. It's not because I'm not narrowing the list here. That's why. It's not actually the same in any way. My projects would drive other devs nuts. It's so old. I like £5 on how to do things as I write a new one. It's like to force. It's like to force you to spend 3 hours to create the code base. Or do I write a plugin? Do I force right? Or do I write a plugin to stand as the editor config in the view window in Rider for me for however I like it? Yeah. That's another point as well, by the way. Like coding standards, we have this code base is my code base, right? I've been writing this for 9 months. It is what it is. That being said, if I say, hey, who wants to join me in writing this? Right? Then the standards are up for discussion. Because the reality is I have to adapt. Right? Because to work effectively in a code base, it's a little easier. What's that one? Oh, I know why. Merge into pattern. Oh, I'll take that. That's okay. So yeah, it's more important if you and I are working in the code base, if you don't agree with some of the standards and we have a difference of opinion on how things should be done, then we can communicate and we can agree upon standards and we can set our standards in place and make sure we're more consistent. Over time, though, the code base will change. To your point, Mr. Anhorn, about 5 pounds on how to do things because you learn new things. I don't mind embracing that as long as the code base is again readable and you can maintain it. If it's slightly inconsistent means if there's again, if that wouldn't necessarily bother me, it was bothering me as it stands because I'd obviously chosen two different ways of doing it. But was it not bothering me, then it'd be fine because at least it's in the same. I can get to that. What I do inside of there was still readable. If I'm creating an API endpoint and calling a command and doing a thing, etc., that's consistency. If the code is slightly different inside of those pieces, that can be changed later. If the entire pattern changes, that's more open for reevaluation because okay, we can't do it a million different ways now. We have to talk about how we're doing it. and that could get introduced as I add new components to the system with these things. I could find a pattern that works better or a naming convention. And some of those have actually been good, and I've actually gone back over and refactored and changed things around. So, yeah, working my opinion is a bit too about this for me. As long as it's readable, I don't mind. I hate PR being blocked for. It's a two lines after a. That's actually something that's worrying me right now about work stuff is that we are going to introduce linting and validation on coding standards like that. And to me, there's battles you should pick, and that doesn't seem like one we need to pick. There's other battles that should come before. Oh, phew. The numbers started changing on the right. I was like, no, please no more follow bots. And it was just transitioning over to the hour. .NET Sharp, you're at the root. No longer need to hassle with formatted .NET. I don't mind tools doing that. Um, yeah. Okay. So I was like, oh yeah, this is where I was. So what I was doing, oh yeah, I was at that point. Yeah, we started this conversation because Deflux disagreed with me. Um, thank you, Deflux, by the way. Had you been here yesterday, we could have had an awesome conversation, and you could have done it with your voice. Um, on a weird note, would it not be better on the changes in that static func to do a two array sync? So I think the annual rule is an open connection to the DB for each, and move next will actually pull back one record at a time. The iron rule would leave an open connection. It was last day at my current job. I'll forgive you. It's fine. I need to ping you something later on. I have an idea for a project that might be best that could work really well in Azure and give me an introduction. Um, that is static, isn't it? Why is that static? Why did it make that static? Because it has no state. It's yeah, it's completely independent. Doesn't matter. So the refactoring did that for it. Okay, so I'm actually only testing this for the purpose of I need to. Uh, this should change something. Do you fight? Yes, you do. Okay. There we go. Okay. So what I've got now is changes as entity type planning item. That's correct. Original entity type. What I want to decide is how much of this information do I want to pull through? Right? Do I want to just change the properties? So does that have a value? Yes, it has a name. And no. Well, original values, current values, changes, original property values, entity type planning item, properties. Seems wrong. Changes first. Entity type. Okay. First. Original dot. Okay, so we get that's an I property. Last updated. Okay. So is that the equivalent of get value, date time, last updated? Nope. Invalid cast. There we go. Okay. What I'm contemplating is, so again, what I'm trying to decide here is do I calculate the changes at this point and publish these as a stream of changes at the same time I publish the actual integration entity to say, hey, if you care about the object itself, here's the object itself. If you care about what changed about the object in any given update, you could be told, here's what updated. So the work here would be to take if I take original, if I don't do any extra parsing to try and get this out, then that's risky because I'm going to end up serializing way too much. I actually want to get the values that have changed. That's all I care about, right? These properties changed. So I can't publish that as it stands because that's a massive serialized object. The reason I'm doing it this way is because then I get out of the way of the saving to the database because this is before saving, right? This is as changes are being saved. If I break this, I break the save to the database and problems happen. That's why I was initially contemplating calculating changes completely outside of the process after this has all been saved and published the integration event. But knowing about it here, why not do it here and publish it? But I don't want, so I'm scared to do extra manipulation on these objects. Because the more I do, the riskier it becomes, right? Because I could make an assumption, and I don't want to have to go and get a list of the properties, get their type, build a generic method to invoke the get value to get the value of it to pass it out. Seems wrong. Also set value. Why am I going to set values? Why have you given me that ability? So this has properties, right? And I can do properties 0. Do you offer get value? Get value comparer. Dot. Get getter, get scale, get field. Get reader field value. Oh dear. Let's see what happens with that. Yeah, no. Finding item primary key. So this is the one feature I missed from VS. VS Code I can't easily do inline var checking. Gotcha. Yeah, it's kind of like this. What I'm trying to do here, that one, is instead of moving this through Kafka, changes becomes kind of part of this, right? We'll do it that way for now. And it's calculated just before I save. And then, whoa, no, sorry about that. Data flow, run group. And the idea being that this will also publish a stream of changes out to Kafka and notifications will pick it up. The idea being there, I will be able to configure what I want to be notified of and whatnot, and that'll be a separate component of the system. What I'm trying to do here is simplify what I actually say has changed, because all I care about is, okay, the object changed, here's what values it had, and here's what values it now has. So I can do a straight up comparison on the properties of the object and publish actually what changed. Because I don't think, actually, let's have a look. Change tracker entries. To list. Yeah, there you go. So interesting associated prejudice and requirement. Oh, unchanged. Okay, because they're along for the ride, right? These objects are associated with the planning item and therefore are along for the ride. They're unchanged. So let's do 0. Okay. So we have current values and original values. What I was wondering is if this actually did provide some more what changed, but it doesn't look like it does. I don't care about the sorry, chair's not moving probably. I don't care about the associated objects because they're going to get if they've changed, they're going to get published as well. So yeah, that's that. Yeah, man. What's up? Is he stumping me? What's stumping you? If I can share. So oh, one sec. Hold on. Yeah. Description. So that's just a straight up string that it gives me there. It doesn't give me an actual object in any form. Get value string. Because I'll have to loop through, build the generic arguments for each one, which I definitely want to cache. I mean, this isn't going to take, a ton of time, but it's still costly enough that I don't want that to slow down access to the database, right? That would be bad. But if I serialize out this entire object, that's an even bigger mess because then I've got to pull all this information back in. that's completely irrelevant. How do I test this? This is a horror to test as well. So challenge number one, how do I then take those original values, build them out as uh, what that? I don't think the enumerable matters here because I don't think you're actually touching the database. It's actually in memory on the object. So I don't think that's going to change anything there. It's not going to resolve these any differently. Do I? I think what I need to do is let's try this. Let's try and do it and see how quick we can get it. Are the types you're pulling available in C# within the code base? If so, a source generate to create a dictionary of all properties for the type and a lookup just store the namespace of the type. Here, no, this wouldn't know about the entity. The entity type is completely transparent to this part. So what I'm thinking of doing is, okay, what I'll do is I'll get the list of properties of the entity, get the type, create a method to generically call and pass it both the before and after. So I only have to generate it once per entry and get both values back. And then original and updated would actually be the values with the property name. Yeah, this is the shared kernel. This has no understanding of which entity I'm talking about, and it could be any one of these systems, right? So I'm gonna have to do this for everything that is entity in my system, which is expensive. So that's why I would want to cache this lookup. I don't want to keep making that call. I've still got to build a generic property every time, unless I create a mapping that public class. Um, oh, fetch. Fetch. What is this? This is what I'm thinking. There is if I do t value public t value retrieve. What will this be? What are those things? Are they property? We want property values. We want accesses. There might be property entries. Let's see. Turn entry. Get. No, not property entries. Property values. Entry dot get value. T value. So if I do something like this, for right now, I'm going to return simple. If I do return before dot get value T, oh, you still need the property name. Do you? That'd be really annoying if I do. No, it's not property value. That's the thing. It's a I property. Let's try that. I love all the work I got through this past week. It's starting to feel like a complete editor. Nice. That's not right, is it? Nope. It's not that. It's not that. I'm gonna stream tomorrow, maybe early morning my time. Nice. I will try and be there. If I can. Strandhorn has been working on a game platform for quite a while now. There's a lot of cool stuff. Has done building games and doing Pulumi and deployment and all sorts of stuff. It's a massive platform. So well worth checking out. Oh, over-engineered? Yes, yes it is. Like sometimes I think over-engineered is I don't think we should be afraid to over-engineer. I think when we know we're doing it, I think sometimes it's just fun. I think we should have fun doing what we're doing. Sometimes it takes over-engineering to realize, oh, there was a much simpler solution. um, I think that's just experience, right? Coming back and, yeah, okay. With hindsight, I could have done that in 3 lines and not 600 and some complicated factory. Yes, this is an I property. So so my thought is what I'll do is I'll calculate the entity type per entity and per value. So I'll cache a dictionary of the entity type and then the value, and then cache an instance of this entity change, or rather the type, and then I'll build an instance of this. Even that, I can cache that because I just need to access it. So given the type, I can just call the thing. And that will mean that I'm not creating a ton of these and I'm not doing them every time. I only incur the cost the first time per entity of calculating its properties because this is giving me all the properties no matter what anyway. I think it can add complexity where it's not needed. I would an entire domain that 13 interfaces, 20 odd classes, and probably 100 methods that could have been 15 methods and two classes. I mean, yeah, it can add complexity, but I think with hindsight, you see the complexity, and then you have the decision of do I go back and fix that, or do I leave it as is? Um, but sometimes you do things just to learn and to grow, and not just do the same things over and over. It's all fun, even the author. I like creating it with the flexibility to use auth zero. I felt like it. Yeah, amazed no on site with foresight. I was only 2 to 3 classes and dozen odd methods. Yeah. Well, I think as well. I think laser focusing, like this. I've got a solution in mind. I'm going to focus on getting that done. I might not see a simple solution right now. Listening to the point of the WTF, I slap it to do it. Just forget about it. Um, um, Deflux, did you fall asleep or is 1 second? I mean, if you want to share something or you want to ask something, you're more than welcome to. There's no time limit. I'm just wondering. No, I worked it out. Awesome. So the moment you asked, the moment you ask is like ding. That's what we're there for. So I just need to figure out what these are. So let's go back and do a bit of I don't think. Oh, you do. Actually, you do store this. Nice. So what actually all are you? Originals what properties? I call original get value. So it is original. That's the challenge, isn't it? That's the problem. Best way to decide a new country to move to. That in a world map or something more digital. Best way to decide a new country to move to. I wouldn't risk a dart at this point in this planet. I'd be very selective. Is Antarctica country enough? I think that which country to move to is definitely the ultimate. Oh, it depends. Yeah, get a boat. There is that. There is that. You're more likely to hit it than anything else, right? Stand a pretty good odd of hitting water. Like the crazy guy in the UK that bought something in the North Sea and built a country. I think actually had a war as well, or declared war. The Principality of Sealand, that's the one. A micronation in the North Sea. That's fascinating. That's a whole lot of crazy, that one. Anyway, um, Let me start this up again and do some analysis of this. So you could go that route. As long as it has gigabit fiber. I'm not sure things have gone the way they expected them to go. I mean, that rules, I mean, as a country to move to, that actually limits your choices as well, right? So we are going to some degree, but more common than you would think. It should hit a break point. There you go. Okay. If you want to pay even more, so the developer world can get it to, if you're willing to pay it. Okay. If you're willing to pay, yeah, I suppose. Okay, that's worrying. It didn't fire when I hit the description, but did fire when I did that. Okay, so changes. Got first. So these are property values. So if I wanted to do this, I do get value against the property value. So I need to know the name of the property. Okay. That's not doable. So what we have is property values, proper values. Let's call it as I mean it, before and after. But then I need this. See, this seems really a bit wasteful though. Because what this is going to do, it's going to do return a tuple. It's going to do before. So if I do it that way, it's going to complain because it can't know that's that. So if I do get value, t value, I think I know how to use a keyboard after all these years. And get value, t value. But these contain all the values, so I'm just passing it down. Either way, so do I even want to create? So yes, I'm tempted to do something a bit messy here. Uh, know that. No, I still need to build the interchange for the T value. I think I don't need the types at all. So my point there is if I can do if I can make this that and then do return there, then do var properties equals entry dot get type. Actually, again, I can actually get a better list there. So var properties, I don't need to do any sort of craziness. Entity dot entities properties. But well, that's just different, isn't it? I can actually say which properties were modified and get the original and current value. Yeah, that might be more helpful. You don't have to be you don't have to overcomplicate this. If that does what I expect it to do, yeah, original value and current value is an object. So this is my list of changes, and that's my property name. So that becomes select menu. Select menu. Yeah, because I'm going to select and I'm going to do just that. Select that. Close that. Close that. Does that do? Does that do a better job? Line already. I really should remember that when I click away from Rider, Rider pings an ear for every build that happens. So when you're running 9 projects, it's a lot of pinging. And also, if you're watching the stream on the other screen, the window pops up perfectly over the chat. So you go to think you're typing something and you're not. You know, I sit here and I'm chilled out all afternoon, and then I start a stream. I get very little done, and 2.5 hours has flown by. I think I need to learn a new language to do this effectively. Yeah. Changing something. Change every wrinkle. I mean, it does say Jeffrey Winkle, but I don't know. There we go. Oh, that takes a long time to work on, though. I think we might have to enumerate that sooner. But what we could do there is we can filter it down to. We can just. No, web. Hold on. It says web properties modified. I'm already saying we're modified, and you're giving me the. You're not giving me those. List. Not wholly sure that's what I want to do, but by the property. Well, it's better than nothing. It gives me that. So I don't need to do anything complicated now, he says. Um, yeah. For some reason, I was so when I'm doing test data in a system, I rarely use silly data. But by the point I'd create this, by the point I got to this screen, I created so many test users. I'd use so many people from streams that I watch, etc., as names. I just merged things together. I just had enough of coming up with names to use. So it became Jeffrey Winkle. Okay, so the next challenge, now I've got this, ultimately what I want to do is essentially serialize that object as saying, hey, this change happened, and publish out that. When I hit publish and publish here, it will JSON serialize the object and allow me to and capture that properly, so I can. I just need to figure out where entity changed event lives, because this has no concept other than publisher. I suppose it does. And it is a dependency of this package. Immediate. But I've only got the abstraction in here. I don't have the concept of the event. Everything's a domain event, right? So ultimately what I do in the domain event publishing is I just turn around and say, hey, everything that's a domain event you want to publish. There you go, that's better. I mean, you don't need to be static, but doesn't matter if you are or not. I'm stuck on this part, right? Because what's going to happen here is I'm going to need to create a each one of these is going to fire off a hmm, I think what I might actually be best doing is creating a separate library for change tracking, having that interceptor in here. I don't mean to make this political, but it's astonishing that we've had a party leader for over 4 years and now Prime Minister for several days, who has yet to express an original thought or opinion without consulting a public relations team. It's truly remarkable. Must be a record. The the election was a little bit different. I looked at the results of it. So, but it's for reference, by the way, even though my accent is British, I am actually in the US. For anyone who doesn't know that, um, it, I kind of was alluding to that before, by the way, when I was like, not necessarily great. You get to vote in both the World's Worst Times. uh, the guy won't even say if he prefers blue shirts or red shirts without seeing what the polls say first. I, some of my context is only what comedians say about the politicians because I think that's the best way of dealing with them. Um, so I've been watching things like um, "Have I Got News for You?" and other comedians speaking about stuff. Uh, Keir Starmer does not look like an inspiring leader, but then again, neither did Sunak. So this election has caused so much fuss with all the opposition parties because our first post system, and now the party who wanted to reform the voting system are in power now. They won't want to change it because they'll lose half their seats if we had proportional representation. Yeah, it is what you have. True, true. It was a vote given to you. Laura Dev, by the way, my apologies. I didn't see the follow. Thank you very much for the follow. Appreciate it. As always, if you're new to the stream, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you wanna ask more, get more information, I'm always happy to stop and talk about what I'm doing. You don't have to just follow along blindly. I feel like the Lib Dems, the Greens, Reform, and probably the SNP, and probably the Tories now is going to get changed. Welcome in. Yeah. Well, I hope, I hope for the UK sake that some things change for the better for all of you. But I think we have a lot of uninspiring leadership these days. And options, not just the current leaderships. So what I'm kind of thinking about right now is I want to make I will say that watching the Houses of Parliament um, do make for some interesting moments. um, so I need to publish an event, right? So my publisher, this ultimately is an outbox. It will store this, it will serialize this object out to a SQL store, and then each of these services is running the process to pick up the message and process it. However, it's the same process, right? What I want to do is say, hey, given a change to this entity, post to this topic. Given a change to this entity, post to this topic. I'm kind of wiring that up now. Um, Part of the reason I'm looking at where to move to, got to be ready, God knows what's going to happen. The party that won due to people hating the Tories and refuse to say what they intend to do could do anything. Tax might double. It's going to be interesting this time around with 72 Lib Dem seats, Nigel Farage, and 4 Green seats. It's going to be a real roller coaster. Yes. You want to see scary defaults? Look at the way the election played out in terms of numbers. I guess it's always like waiting for the next season of TV. Just well, I know that politics is a risky. Oh, that's not. I don't want property name, do I? I do want property name, but I want kind of want entity. Ugh. Select. That does need to be new properties equals then entity type equals entry dot entity dot get type. No, not there. Not there. That's the end of that select. That should be there. There we go. Auburn is an independent MP for my constituency coming in session, so I have to watch it to make sure I keep up to date with stuff. Nice, I applaud that. And then this is change.properties. Because that's a list of properties that have hopefully that is a list of properties that have changed, but I don't think it actually is. By the way, it'll be the list of properties with their original and current value. So what I'm going to do here is serialize this, publish it out. I need something to receive it in the service that's going to receive it, and then basically turn around and say, okay, well, so what I'm thinking is in the configuration somewhere, again, I really want a better way of doing this stuff. But I'm basically going to have to register kind of a handler. It's almost on the out. It's almost on the mediator. So kind of like I want to say, add handler, and this might be, uh, this might be, what's that? What do I call it? Entity changed. Figure entity changed. This is now I'm in a mess with the design because I'm kind of merging the two concepts. So I know I need to turn around and publish to Kafka, but Kafka has nothing to do with changes at this point because it's an artifact. Might be why moving it to the outside of this system is the cleaner thing because now I'm going to merge things together. It's not an outbox consideration for Mediator. I'm publishing a notification. I just need to do something to receive that notification, but that notification thing that I'm going to configure is going to do one thing overall. I remember seeing a clip where the Lib Dems were having their national conference and they had a massive display all along the front. Stories about 8 foot high, saying Lib Dems national event. The cameraman was facing the sign and asking passersby if anything in town was happening today. They all replied like, no idea what's happening in town. Some of those, being British people, you would actually think they're just being sarcastic about it, but yeah. But I would imagine a majority were completely oblivious. Yeah. Okay. So what I need to do, I think, is got a chicken and egg going on here right now. This is not a fun one. So having the interceptor in the shared kernel kind of works. But then I don't want the shared kernel necessarily to know about this because the stuff I've got to build around this is title linked with Kafka. The idea I put in here with the iNotification publisher is I actually don't know what is dealing with that publishing. It's completely disconnected from me. So I shouldn't have to care of, I could hook in any sort of implementation of iNotification publisher and it will deal with that. And even that name is terrible because it does lend towards mediator, right? So I have brought that dependency in here. But in general, the concept is that I shouldn't actually have to care about what's actually implementing it. It just happens to be that. Realistically, what I should do is have a more generalized interface if I want to decouple that further. But what I was contemplating is, okay, well, move changes out to its own library or its own component. It's not really its kind of application. And then hook up a generic system of like, okay, well, you publish this event and um, because ultimately all I'm going to do is publish each object out to Kafka. I don't actually need to do much more with it. Especially if, I mean, actually I do need to say, okay, which values are the same, trim these down and publish what changed about this entity. There's another downside to this as well, which I can't get post save. If I do this post save, I don't get the changes. So I can't say what was the original and what's the current because I've saved it. I've already saved it to the database. I've flushed those changes out by doing that. Doing it pre-save, if I publish this and then the save fails for whatever reason, I've actually published an event that says this is happening, and that from what I've experienced so far, if this fails, it should roll back and therefore not actually commit to the database because this ends up being a write to the DB. That's why I built the outbots the way I did, is because early on I had a lot of actions that need to be performed, but if any one of them failed, everything should roll back. So I wrapped everything in a transaction to test. But actually this would write because these are not wrapped in a transaction. So this might be why it is simpler to do this outside after I've saved all this and published the fact that it's changed and captured the change, right? I run less risk of introducing problems. The only challenge is I now need to go off and figure out all this stuff for myself when I actually do have it here. Right now I have what was it and what is it. What I'm thinking, let's see if we can get this together quickly. So let's do new solution folder, changes. And then we're going to create a new project. This is going to be class library source. This is going to be just going to change it right a second. Now interceptor. No, that should be interceptors. That's not infrastructure. Again, I'm trying to name some things fit nice and cleanly. Some don't. So that's because I need entity framework. Again, I've got a little option if I want to do that. I don't really have much luxury here to say, yeah, I can do whatever I want here. Right? I have to reference shared. I have to reference Outbox, so I need that notification publisher. So to develop Outbox abstractions. Outbox. Did I not make an abstractions library here? No. Not Kafka Outbox either. Mediator Outbox. So that is one where I've open sourced that library to do the actual Outbox part. Now reference share kernel add. Oh, it's not in share kernel. It's saying no, it's not there. Definitely not there. Closing contracts. No, that's iDomain event. iEntity. Shared. Yeah, entities is in there. Refactor this. Adjust namespaces. That well, that should be. Why is that not share kernel? Already ended. Using shared entities. Okay. Events. Entity. Change event. I mean, this would support if I wanted to track deletes separately. I could do it that way, I suppose. Mediator is because I've got iNotification publisher in there. Mediator is a what's it called? What's it referred to as? There's a name for it. Implicit. So we can do that. Then here's a challenge. Now properties, what object type is this? Right? Because this is a list of property change. String can be a record. This definitely could be a record. Property change, string, name, object, before, object, after. So I'm going to get rid of the original updated terminology just because I don't need database concepts in there. So it just allows me to stay away from that. Smart. Okay. Event data DB contest event data. I wonder what would happen if every single constituency in the UK elected an independent candidate. I mean, you could end up with a lot of dysfunction, right? Because if they don't, I would imagine most would have to align somewhere. But you could end up with quite a lot of dysfunction. And the last thing you need would be to have a political system that's just completely stumped. Um, DB context. Let's do this properly then this time. That's a context. And then here, in our entity changed event, we actually end up with, yeah, I feel like if the British people felt like revolting against all the parties and ended up voting independent, it would really throw a spanner in the works. Yeah. And the reality is it's not likely to happen, right? In hundreds and hundreds of years, you know, as divided as they could have been, they've not, they've aligned somewhere. And with the British politics, it's not like you don't have choice. I mean, there is some aspect of you have little choice. But the next government will be Reform or Lib Dems because they don't give Starmer a long time. Well, Reform didn't get that much. I mean, they gained a lot of ground. Uh, yeah, they gained a substantial amount, but yeah, it's and again appealing to people's fears in a lot of ways. This change event is a type entity type. I wonder if I could do this differently. Nothing wrong with that. Pioneerable update changes record. After all, if we were concerned about the nation. Hi, Binary, how you doing? How's things? I'm not reading out everything. Yeah. I'm sorry. Great. I've been learning about CRDTs, and I'm convinced it's the future. CRDTs? Do I know this acronym? Well, the task style. In theory. You have to give me help on the CIDTs. Gene tracking. So what I'm trying to do is try and get far enough along with this that I can actually see it publish, and then I can figure out what to do next from there. Because what should happen here is this should give me the changes and publish this event. If it happens to um, publish this event and it never went through, there is a risk there. At least if I push the changes component to post, everything's committed, and I'm relaying, I'm basing it on an event. I know that it's happened, and I'm telling the truth to the system. Uh, see Peter Hitchens on trigonometry a few days ago. He got it right. No. I'm gonna let that one through. Hexic. It didn't like the you know which word it didn't like. I'll let it through, but it's I get what you mean. Okay, he's upon the moron word. It's late on a Saturday night here, and it's definitely late for you all in the UK. So I'm not gonna uh but I don't want to start a debate, right? I don't want to get into political debate. I'm okay with a little bit of politics talk because you're adults, but at the same time, I don't want to start anyone off on a debate. So, because we all have different ways of thinking about things, right? So, as we learned about with the discussion on Agile before. So that was just on software and well, that you're an adult. No, no, no. They've been talking about it. It's fine, binary. I'm just trying to make sure that we don't get into any as it's continuing. Coffee versus tea. Uh, yeah, I kind of tend to agree. People didn't understand what it meant overall. It was a little uneducated, and but then again, it's not been going that well in terms of educating the public on a lot of things. Again, coming back to the Lib Dem bus thing, right? People are apathetic to it. Yeah, no perfect system. So what I need to do, because I've moved this out, I need to make this and um, where's AC? Agent Coder? Agent Coder hasn't been on Twitch as far as I know in a long time. For three space tabs. Proportional representation would probably be a good idea. I've not seen how it would play out for us, and I know for me as an independent candidate, it would be quite bad. But for the country, it would be all right, I'd assume. Proportional as in like the the electoral college in the US to try and even things out. You mean like that system? Or vote percentage? So you try and weight everywhere out. I know. The people a lot smarter than me. Okay, so the idea here would be in planning. See, this is why changes doesn't exist in application. I don't like changes existing there because it's a kind of a component of the system rather than an actual. Basically, the rule is the way I've got it laid out is these components cannot reference each other, right? View can't know about tickets, view can't know about tenant or teams or planning or attachments. So changes has to come out of there. It's kind of a supporting library thing. It's not really a component into the application stack, even though it will produce things. But its componentry is used by the things. So yeah. So the challenge I have now, okay. So what I've got is I've done this add pool DB context with domain events, right? Use SQL Server dot add intercept. Okay, so we can still do it. New. Hold on. Let's do class service collection extensions. Thoughts on extension types? We don't see that stuff. ChatGPT deserves at least a few hundred. The calculation of the percentage of voters divided by the amount of seats available, which is 649, and someone is mean and manages to get the speaker's seat. Well, now the Greens put a candidate in the speaker's constituency thinking they'd win. One farm is worth like 100 city votes. Service collection. Uh, track changes this. Service collection. Actually, do I want to do it on? I don't want to do it on service collection. This isn't service collection. This is what is that object? Use SQL Server is a DB context options builder. DB context options builder extensions. It's that import references because it's an entity framework. It's fine. DB context options builder. So what this is going to do, builder dot add interceptors. It's going to do new change tracking interceptor. No, it's not. How the heck did I do this before? Add singleton. Get required. Okay, add interceptors provided a get required service. Okay, so there we go. That's how you do it. Add interceptors provider. Dot get. No. Add interceptors configure. Oh, I took the configure. I add the provider. Dang it. How do I do this now? How do I do it without that? That just takes an enumerable of that. Oh, fluff. You see the movie Idiocracy? Less IQ equals more babies. You're suggesting would have more votes. Why do they even get more? Not scientists, etc. You lot are going to turn this into a scary place. Again, late night, Saturday, different place than 7 a.m. Monday to Friday. So I wouldn't quite say that. Oh, you mean, gotcha. Okay. Hey Ryan, how you doing? We barely had any firewalls this week. Even on the fourth, we I barely noticed them. It's really funny is when MPs that want to apply to to get in, you have to lie. Oh, chicken and egg, chicken and egg. It's just when I'm doing this sort of stuff and I'm pondering through things, this is where I am constantly trying to think, maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe this is not the right way to do this. Maybe I'm making this a lot harder than it should be. I don't want to do it this way. Configure. So configure. See, that adds pooled DB context factory, right? So this is adding the context factory, and then I'm adding the interceptors into the configure of the context factory. I don't have any way of providing that outside of the object, so I can't extend this. Just I can't think what's the biggest. So I might be making more of a mess trying to do something clever in here, but I don't really have an option because I've already built the context factory here. So but I can't double extend it, right? As you've said that, deflux, two sets of fireworks just went off. Double extended abstract factory facade. Tell me you're a Java dev without telling me you're a Java dev. Because again, different responsibilities. Here, I'm just trying to make sure that I can't forget to add the domain and the entity base. So this updates the last updated all the time. So if you've got an identity, it has to have last updated on it, and this makes sure that when it's been modified, it gets its last updated. I have to work at 8 a.m., so I'm gonna go sleep. Yeah, that's a good choice. Hexic, thank you very much for coming hanging out, and it's been fun. See you again soon. Have a great Sunday. To the people. Maybe I'll goodbye fast. You never know. Work hard Monday to pay our taxes. So, so I can't extend the context options builder here. Well, no, I can't. I can't do it. Builder, because I can add an interceptor, adds interceptors instances to those resident the context, but I have to have the actual implementations. So when I'm doing it before, I I don't have instances to feed it, and I don't want to give it a new version because I've got dependencies of that version. I need it to be resolved. abstract factories. But this feels like I'm just bumbling from one problem to the next, which is now getting scary. My my first solution of doing this outside of this, although more work on the calculation side of things, is still looking mighty easier and cleaner from a responsibility perspective. So do I change that? Do I change this method? Well, no, I can't do that because I'm actually saying add a pool DB contents factory. Kind of doing that deliberately. It's all very elaborate. My accountant set it up. That was Jimmy Carr's excuse as well. I don't know. This is I'm not sure that I won't make the system messier by adding the pieces um, that I'm trying to add here. And I think I might make it more error prone and thus it needs to be 200. Um, might make it more error prone, which then makes this is a fundamental component in the system as well. If I break this or there's any bug appears in this, data disappears. So this might not be a really good idea. Okay. I don't see any way of doing this effectively. I could. Hmm. Configure, but I did. Hold on. Did I plan for this? No, I did it that way so I could still do the stuff that needs to happen inside of the DB content storage. I expand that so that you can still touch the stuff in DB context options builder, even though you've got that. So I'm just providing a way of still getting to the configure options there. So you can call configure and it gives you the builder. Okay. TB wasn't here to vote, so we lost it. He's in the tower when he moved to the USA. I've been here now 16 years? No, 17 years this year. Hmm. Well, since the yeah, I'm just using the loopholes the politicians take. Slippery slope. Okay, so what I'm contemplating doing here, no, I don't like it. I don't like it because I don't have the options available to me there. It's not a good option because I could pass another, give it the ability to have another method, and then if I override that, then I can also basically pass this down. It does it doesn't help me though. It just makes things even messier, and the API look planning opportunities. I like how Hexy's like, I'm going to bed now. I gotta get up at 8 a.m. Then you pull them into a tax conversation. Nope, I'm sticking around. Activation unless you get caught. Yeah. Let's hope your chat is not being monitored. That's definitely a race to the bottom binary. That's 100% a race to the bottom. So, okay. I don't know if this is a good way to do this at all. I think I think I've explored more ways not to do this thing this week than I have actually made progress on code. Um, when I've thought I've got something, I've looked and thought, no, that doesn't work. When I stopped to think, because this came from a conversation with one line about changes, and I thought, oh, hold on, is the right thing to actually do this at the point I change the data, not after I've changed the data and try and figure it out, because I know I've changed the data. But again, I don't want to have to change everything in the system so far. Actually, shouldn't need to care about what changed, right? I don't want to build that into every single component I make. Oh, you have to tell people what changed as well. So I'm trying to do this in a way that I can calculate without affecting, here's what I'm storing. This does run that risk. But it doesn't really hurt me to say, okay, let's snapshot it out after the fact. It just adds more storage and adds a different system into the mix. Um, yeah. Actual tax. HMRC would win hands down. I didn't pay any capital gains because I didn't do anything to generate that. For C++. Well, I appreciate you coming hanging out here anyway. I know it might not be the best language, but I'm kind of fond of C sharp. Maybe. I'm feeling someone just changed up their stream. Let's keep an eye on the stream. C# is all right, better than Java. It being very controllable. I hate garbage collection. This feels like I'm so close. I just don't know. I've got better things on my mind. Last thing I need to worry about is memory. Because I can size it up. Yeah, I'm only at 58 of 128 gig. I've got plenty of memory. I don't need to worry about it. I've written my own allocators for things like that, so I know how this stuff works. And that's a useful skill set. TV is making me less British by not allowing me to swear. Well, I can't. I'm not relaxing the rules on a even if it is a later stream, because they all go to VODs, they all go to YouTube as well. And if anyone's watching through, I don't want to go too far off norm. Isn't there a function like emergency low memory? Juicy, juicy, juicy. There was stuff inside, but another word beginning with that. Hi, Peter. How you doing? How about it? Got a dog visitor again. Hey, bud. Sorry, I've got a little friend. Um, and a highlighted message. Yeah, I took away all the rewards because it's not like people use them very much. So I had things in other things in there, but yeah, highlight my messages is pretty much it for now. Always open to suggestions on channel point rewards. Um, this is port in a babe. Why would I waste baked beans? Do you know how expensive it is to get baked beans here? They might be cheap to you, but they're not cheap here. Cost me like $10 for 4 cans. So yeah, exactly. So I'm not pouring beans over my head. So I'm not joking either. It's a couple of dollars per can. So yeah. So when I want beans on toast, I have to pay for it. Then bean Heinz baked beans are not cheap. Oh my goodness me, I've been invaded by two dogs now. Okay, I'm gonna go BRB for 1 second. Okay. Sorry about that. I think I get them for like $1. If you can tell me where you find them for $1, doggo cam. I wish I would have to set that up, but maybe one day. Uh, not too bad at the moment, actually. But still, 6 pack of beans is $17 on Amazon. Oh, so but yeah, yeah, it would. You use Bush's beans for baked beans on toast, and that's even close to acceptable. Next time you go, let me know if you find them and they're anywhere decent in price, because I think the Stop and Shop near me has tins of beans for like $3, something like that. Yeah. Well, this has been a very random discussion, this stream. Um, that being said, I've actually achieved stuff as well, which is good. Well, achieved as in come to some dawning realizations that I'm stuck no matter which path I take right this second. And actually agile, scrum, all that sort of stuff as well. We got a whole lot of conversation out at the beginning or earlier on in the stream. That's not wrong. I genuinely don't mind it. Like, if anyone has any questions, thoughts, or opinions on the code, you're more than welcome to pass them. I like to discuss it. I don't mind getting different perspectives on stuff because it does help me and other people grow, right? So if it's all talk, I don't mind. And the agile stuff, you know, it just shows how much how differing our experiences are. CRDTs on a stream, it will blow your mind, like Kafka. Yeah, Kafka is kind of the backbone of what I'm doing. Yes, now rewrite it in Ruby on Rails. That'd be kind of fun. One of the things, just kind of diverting because one of the things I have actually contemplated, and I don't know if many people have seen most of this. So the way this system is built right now, it looks kind of like this, right? Each component of the system has its own services, its own API, etc. One of the options you have when you build a system like that is that you can actually build any component in any language you want if it can achieve that. So if I feel that there's a better use of another language or another framework to achieve a component in the system, that's actually open to me. I'm not going to be developing components in Ruby, but it is an option, right? I could do it because I could build an API. It does have a British section. Yeah, 4.59 for a can of curried baked beans. One can. Um, do it in assembly. But if again, the reason I'm developing this system in this way is because I've developed monoliths. I don't suppose I've ever developed a true microservice architecture, but then again, I've never liked the idea of a microservice down to that level of a function as a service. Um, but this is a distributed or modular monolith, I suppose. But if I found like, oh, well, I need to do a lot of processing on this endpoint when something happens, I need to grind a lot of data or whatever, I still have that option. I can build components of the system because everything goes through Kafka. I can spread out the data in any way I want. Normally, if I'm going to choose anything for a different language, I could put it this side of the Kafka, Kafka border, as I'm going to put it. But embracing using GraphQL for the UI side of things, for the view side of things, embracing just having these as data stores that publish the data and condense down into this view DB. I've really enjoyed building it this way, and it does make sense to me. Um, it does open up that option. GraphQL, the bandwagon's ended, now we have RSC. Use a lot of acronyms. I don't immediately think to go to acronyms. Rubik. Okay. React's 19. So okay, gotcha. I haven't got anywhere near React. So the UI for right now is Angular. I've not got near React. It's not something I get on well with. Windows alarm on PC won't go off if the PC's been idle for more than an hour. Short the middle creates an endpoint based on async boundaries in JavaScript. What uses an alarm that doesn't go off if you leave it for longer than an hour? Eh, yeah, not useful. If you set an alarm, you want it to kind of go off. Ah, gotcha. Yep. Okay. Anyway, um, so I didn't make solid progress. If I could figure out how to effectively push this in, so I need this change tracking inceptor. I don't want it as part of my core. Is it hard? It's this piece that I don't want as part of my core. That's the problem. Um, but if I can figure out how to wind it into the actual data context as a separate component, then this could work. It could publish out. I still have to build the part that actually receives the event, right? Which again would be part of this library as it stands. But then basically what that would do is say, okay, well, given the I'd have to configure it in each thing and say, okay, well, given you receive this entity type, then you want to publish to this topic. That's ultimately all I'm doing. Basically turning around and publishing objects. So, when I got a new phone, I synced all my apps across and reset up all my alarm. I don't know that the migrated alarm app was still there under a different name. So my 8 alarm clocks are now 16. I have my alarm clock is you have to solve a not too difficult, but difficult enough when you're trying to even see something first thing in the morning math. So it might be like 9 times 7 plus 16. Solve it. Otherwise, I'm going to play music at random out of any playlist you've ever listened to at highest volume. So I literally have about 5 seconds to answer that math. Thank you. So yeah, and you can make it more if you start to make it if you start to become too easy, you can make it harder and add more in. But it's just a way of making sure that I have to acknowledge my alarms, and it's worked very well. I'm really proud of that, actually. I wrote a network protocol for talking to microcontrollers, and once the connection protocol is complete, the controller will send a message to the server. They'll show buttons which are also exposed by an API endpoint that will run functions on the controller. You can specify parameters and stuff. Nice. Pretty cool, I know. Give me, you need help. That's sick. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I'm actually going to finish the stream before Hexic actually goes to sleep. Hexic, you've got to go to work in a few hours. Does anyone have any recommendations of where we're going? Where I can take you guys over to? Just a client meeting. 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Wow. That's a commitment to your job. I want Heinz curry baked beans. So I was gonna raid Alou. Alou is the one I had actually up in the first place, but then they started playing Elder Scrolls. Teammates. Have I been to Motsu before? No, I haven't been over here before. Let's go raid a game dev. I will do binary. It's on my list. I'm going to choose the office of the weekend if it's a reason. Interesting. Taking off beginning of the week. Okay. Well, I want to say thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for hanging out in the chat. I've had fun. It was worth starting up a stream on a Saturday evening. It's always a risky one when you're out of your schedule. I'll maybe be back tomorrow if I figure out anything else on this, but if not, I'll be back at my normal time on Monday. I have the week off, so my streams may go a little longer through the week this week. And yeah, thank you all for joining me. Let's go to Motsu Mates, and I'll see you again soon. And I'm still terrible. I still didn't set up a screen. So yeah, I'll just give a shout out. We need to raid. How long have you been doing this streaming thing? I instinctively type /shout out. So anyway, thanks all. Take care. See you all again soon. Bye.